The restraints cut into my wrists the moment I opened my eyes. Cold light, cold air, a room built for something that did not care whether I lived or died. My name is Daniel Hart, and 3 hours ago I was flying a supply ship through a quiet patch of space that was supposed to be empty. It was not empty. A patrol ship larger than anything I had ever seen dropped out of the dark and pulled me in like I was nothing more than a piece of debris worth collecting. Now I was strapped to a table in a room full of humming machines, and the beings standing over me were not human. Tall, gray-skinned, with eyes like polished stone, they moved with the calm of people who had done this many times before. None of them looked at my face. They looked at my arms, my chest, my veins, like I was a container waiting to be measured. One of them, the one with a silver mark across her collar, leaned closer and spoke in a flat, clicking voice that a small device on my ear turned into words I could understand. Subject is conscious. Good. This will be easier if he stays that way. I pulled against the restraints. They did not move. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and I did the only thing I could do. I talked. Whatever you're planning, you don't have to do this. I'm not a threat to you. I'm just a pilot. The gray-skinned woman, the one they called Dr. Kellen, did not answer me directly. She was busy checking a long tube that ran from a sealed container into a thin needle, and the liquid inside that tube was not any color I had ever seen in blood. It shimmered, silver and blue, moving like it was alive on its own. You are the 7th test subject this cycle, she said, almost to herself. The other 6 did not survive contact with the fluid. Perhaps a human will be different, perhaps not. Either way, we will learn something. That sentence landed harder than anything else in that room. 6 others. 6 people who had been strapped to this same table before me, and none of them had walked away. Wait, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. What is that? What are you putting in me? A second alien, taller and broader, the one who seemed to be in charge, stepped forward. His name tag, if that is what it was, read as Commander Voss when the translator caught it. It is called Nanofluid, he said. A living machine in liquid form, built to replace blood, to repair damage before damage can even register as pain, to create a soldier who cannot be stopped by ordinary wounds. Every species we have tested it on has rejected it. Their bodies fight the fluid instead of accepting it, and the fight kills them within minutes. Then why would you use it on me? I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Voss looked at me the way someone looks at an insect they are mildly curious about. Because humans are new. Because your species has not yet been tested against this technology. And because we have nothing left to lose by trying. I understood then that no amount of talking was going to save me. These people were not cruel for the sake of cruelty. They were desperate, and desperation makes people do things that logic alone never would. I was not a prisoner to them. I was a data point. Dr. Kellen lifted the needle, and I felt the cold press of metal against the inside of my arm. Please, I said, and I am not ashamed to admit it, because anyone strapped to that table would have said the same thing. Please, don't. She did not stop. The needle went in, and a second later so did the fluid. The pain was not like anything I had ever felt before. It was not a burn, and it was not a cut. It was as if every vein in my body had suddenly filled with ice water and lightning at the same time, and my back arched against the restraints so hard I heard something in the table crack. My vision went white at the edges, then gray, then black, and I heard Dr. Kellen's voice, distant and clinical, say something about vitals dropping, and then I heard nothing at all. I do not know how long I was gone. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. What I remember next is silence, and the strange feeling of my own heartbeat, steady, strong, and completely painless. I opened my eyes. The lights above me were the same cold white, but something in the room had changed. Dr. Kellen was standing a few feet away, staring at a screen with an expression I did not expect to see on an alien's face. It looked like fear. That is not possible, she said, mostly to herself. His vitals should have collapsed 6 minutes ago. I turned my head, slowly, testing whether my body still belonged to me. My arm, the one where the needle had gone in, was fine. Not bruised, not swollen, just fine, like nothing had happened at all. Commander Voss walked back into the room, and when he saw the screen, he stopped completely still. Run the scan again, he said. I have run it 4 times, Kellen answered. The nanofluid has fully integrated. His cellular structure is not rejecting it, it is working with it. I did not understand the science, not then, but I understood the way they were both looking at me, like I had become something they no longer knew how to control. Voss stepped closer, and this time, for the first time since I had woken up in that room, he actually looked at my face instead of my veins. "Cut him," he said to Kellen. "A small test, nothing severe." Kellen hesitated, then picked up a thin blade from a tray beside the table and drew it lightly across the back of my hand. I felt the sting of it, sharp and quick, and a thin line of red appeared on my skin. Then, before the blood had even finished welling up, the line began to close. I watched it happen with my own eyes, and even I could barely believe it. The cut sealed itself in seconds, leaving nothing behind but a faint pink mark that faded as I watched. Kellen actually stepped back from the table, and for the first time since I had arrived on that ship, I saw something other than cold curiosity on an alien's face. I saw them realize they had made something they did not fully understand. 6 subjects died fighting this fluid, Kellen whispered. His body did not fight it, it welcomed it. Voss turned to her, his voice low. Why would a human body accept something no other species could survive? I found my voice again, quieter now, but steady, because we've been healing ourselves since before we had science to explain it. Infections, injuries, poison, cold, heat. We've survived all of it without machines. Maybe your fluid didn't fight my biology. Maybe it just found a partner that already knew how to keep going no matter what. Neither of them answered me. They were too busy staring at the readings on the screen, numbers that apparently made no sense according to everything they thought they knew. I did not waste that silence. The restraints on my wrists were built for creatures stronger than the average human, thick metal bands locked with a simple mechanical clasp. Under normal circumstances, I would never have been able to break them. But my hands were not shaking anymore. My grip felt different, steadier, stronger than it had any right to be. I do not know if it was the fluid or simply the adrenaline of finally having a chance, but when I twisted my wrist hard against the clasp, something in it gave way with a sharp crack. Kellen turned at the sound, too late. I was already sitting up. "Alert the guards," Voss said, backing away, his calm finally cracking. I swung my legs off the table and stood, and for a moment, the room spun, my body still adjusting to whatever had changed inside it. But the dizziness passed fast, faster than it should have, and I steadied myself against the edge of the table. The door to the room slid open, and 2 guards rushed in, tall and armored, carrying weapons that hummed with a low electric charge. I had no weapon. I had no plan beyond the simple, desperate need to survive. So I did the only thing I could. I ran straight at the nearest guard before he could aim. The impact should have knocked me flat. Instead, it barely staggered me. I grabbed the barrel of his weapon and shoved it upward as it fired, the shot scorching a black mark across the ceiling instead of through my chest. The guard was strong, far stronger than a human should have been able to match. But my grip did not weaken, my legs did not buckle, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I understood that whatever they had put into my veins was not just healing my wounds anymore. It was keeping me standing when I had every reason to fall. I twisted the weapon free and struck the guard once, enough to drop him, and turned toward the second before he could get a clear shot. He fired anyway. The blast caught me across the shoulder, and pain exploded through my body, hot and sharp, spinning me half around and knocking me into the wall. For a second, I thought that was it. I thought this was where the story ended, in a cold room on an alien ship, far from anyone who would ever know what happened to me. Then, the pain started to fade. I looked down at my shoulder, expecting blood, expecting torn fabric and torn skin, and I found the wound already closing, the burnt edges smoothing over as if some invisible hand were stitching me back together in real time. It did not stop the pain completely, and it did not make me forget what had just happened, but it kept me on my feet when nothing else should have. The second guard stared at me, his weapon still raised, and I saw the same fear I had seen in Kellen's eyes. I did not give him time to fire again. I closed the distance and knocked the weapon aside, and this fight, like the first, ended quickly. I did not enjoy any of it. I want to be clear about that. I was not fighting because I wanted to hurt anyone. I was fighting because it was the only way I was going to see my own sky again, and every second I stayed on that ship was a second closer to becoming nothing more than another entry in Dr. Kellen's failed data. I moved through the corridor outside the room, my shoulders still aching but no longer bleeding, my legs carrying me faster than I expected. Alarms began to sound somewhere deeper in the ship, a rising, pulsing tone that meant every guard on board now knew exactly what had happened. I did not know this ship. I did not know where the exits were, or where a shuttle might be waiting, or even if escape was possible at all. But I kept moving, because standing still was not an option anymore. A door ahead of me slid open, and 3 more guards stepped through, weapons raised, and for a moment I froze, my back against the corridor wall, my mind racing for any kind of plan. There was no plan. There was only the fluid in my veins and the simple, stubborn refusal to stop that had apparently kept humans alive since long before any of us understood why. They fired. I do not remember deciding to move, only that I was moving, ducking low and pushing forward instead of back, taking a hit across my side that dropped me to one knee, gasping, my vision flickering at the edges. But my body did not let me stay down. Something inside me, something new and strange and undeniably mine now, pulled me back up before the pain had even finished registering. I do not know exactly how the fight ended. I remember fragments, a weapon torn from someone's grip, a guard stumbling back, the cold metal floor beneath my palms as I pushed myself upright again and again. What I remember clearly is the silence afterward, and the sight of the corridor ahead of me finally clear. I found a smaller room near the edge of the ship, filled with pods that looked, at least to my eyes, like some kind of emergency transport. I had no idea if I would even survive using one. I had no idea if it would fly, or explode, or simply drift forever in the dark once it left the ship, but staying meant certain capture, and I had already decided, somewhere between the first cut on my hand and the last guard I had faced, that I was not going to let this be the end of my story. I climbed into the pod, found the controls, and prayed, in the plain and honest way people pray when they have run out of other options, that something on this ship still wanted me to leave more than it wanted me caught. The pod launched. I do not know if anyone tried to stop it. I do not know if Voss or Kellen watched from some window as I fell away from their ship and into open space, but I like to imagine they did, and that whatever they saw on their instruments made no more sense than anything else that had happened that day. I drifted for what felt like a long time before a signal caught my beacon, a human patrol ship, close enough to hear my call and curious enough to answer it. When they pulled me aboard, the first thing the medic on duty did was reach for a scanner, the same kind of instrument Kellen had used, and the first thing she said, after a long, confused pause, was almost exactly the same thing. "This can't be right," she muttered, tapping the screen. "These readings don't match anything in the database." Her name was Grace, and she spent the next 2 hours running every test she could think of, each one giving her results that made less sense than the last. My blood was not blood anymore, not entirely. It carried something new inside it now, something that repaired damage faster than any medicine humanity had ever built, something that had bonded with me instead of destroying me. Word of what happened on that ship did not stay quiet for long. Within weeks it had traveled far beyond the small patrol vessel that picked me up, passed from officer to officer, then from government to government, until eventually it reached ears far outside human space entirely. I am told other species began asking questions after that. Quiet, careful questions about what exactly had happened to the human test subject who should have died, and instead walked out standing. I met a researcher a few months later, a calm, thoughtful man named Owen, who had been studying the fluid's effects on my body ever since I returned. He told me something I have not forgotten. "They built that fluid to create the perfect soldier," he said, looking over my scans with a kind of quiet wonder. "A being that heals faster than it can be hurt, and every species they tried it on rejected it, because their bodies were built to survive within limits. Yours wasn't. Humans have never known how to accept a limit. Not really. You've been breaking your own rules since the beginning, healing from things that should have ended you, adapting to places that should have killed you. That fluid didn't make you unstoppable, Daniel. It just gave your own stubbornness something new to work with." I think about that a lot, especially now, whenever I catch someone staring a little too long at the faint shimmer that sometimes crosses my skin in low light. A small, strange reminder of everything that happened in that cold room on a ship that was never meant to let me leave. I was not meant to survive that needle. I was the 7th subject, the one they expected to become another quiet failure buried in someone's research notes. Instead, I became something they never planned for, proof that whatever they thought they knew about strength and survival, they had never truly tested it against a human before. They wanted a perfect soldier. What they got instead was a man who simply refused to stop. And across the galaxy, that turned out to be so much worse for them than anything they had been trying to build.